On this episode of the Global Travel Channel podcast show, we find out what it's like to travel from Germany to the United States to start a new life and to chase your dream. Welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. My name is Mark Philpott. On the show, we talk to people from across the world about all things related to travel, from amazing adventures to inspiring stories, to the not so well-known destinations. We cover it all. You can find all of our previous podcast episodes on our Global Travel Channel website by visiting www.globaltravelchannel.com. The Global Travel Channel is a collaboration between travel writers, photographers, YouTubers, podcasters, and travel bloggers from across the world. We bring you information that we hope makes your next travel experience an awesome one, no matter where you decide to travel to. You can also find the Global Travel Channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So be sure to subscribe, like, and follow us so that you can keep updated on our new content postings as and when they happen. You can even now support us through Patreon for as little as the price of a cup of coffee per month. You can help us continue to produce this podcast show by visiting our Patreon page. All the details are on our website, and any contributions are greatly appreciated. Now let's get on with today's show. Moving country to the other side of the world at a young age to pursue your dream can often be a very challenging experience. Today, my guest has done just that, and we're going to hear all about his story. So it's a very warm welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Theo Preiswerk. So Theo, welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. How are you going today?
Hey, what's up? I'm doing really well. I'm a little confused by the situation because, usually I'm on the other side of a podcast. I'm not a guest. Usually I'm a host as well, but so this is kind of weird for me.
Well, welcome, and I wanted to tell my audience today that you are a fellow podcaster, and you've really just come back into it because you took a bit of a break, didn't you?
Exactly. So I used to work with my former roommate. He was from Germany as well, so we kind of started that project from scratch. He was a German as well. So yeah, we just we randomly started, you could say that, and it was not really well planned out, and unfortunately I have to say he graduated, so he went back to Germany, and I had the chance to go back to Phoenix, but I didn't want to, I kind of want to keep that project because I really like the idea of what I'm doing. So I decided, let's use the summer break, because in the American colleges you have 3 months of a summer break, to work a little bit more professionally on it, pre-record some episodes, look a little bit at the marketing and all that stuff. So I did that, and now I'm putting a lot of my heart into it, a lot of my work, and it's been fun so far,
Cool. What actually made you decide that you wanted to start a podcast?
So, maybe I have to go back a little bit. I'm studying in the States, and even though I was born and raised for 19 years in Stuttgart, Germany, so for me, you can imagine it was quite a culture shock coming from Germany to the States and going to a school there. I've never really been in the States, so everything was weird, everything was new, and just a lot of new experiences. And I kind of want to capture my life, so I kind of want to capture the society of America and all that stuff. And so Michael and me, the one I was talking about already, we decided to create the podcast because we want to talk to people who form the American culture, but we also want to look at things from a different culture aspect, and we want to compare certain political systems, certain things that's going on, and kind of like a mediation between the American nation and Germany. So that's how it kind of started.
That's fantastic. Now I want to back up as you did to start this, and you're originally from Stuttgart. Now this is a travel show, so I can't go forward anymore without asking you to tell my listeners a little bit about Stuttgart and why they should go and visit there if they're passing through Germany. So tell us some things about Stuttgart that are interesting from a tourist perspective, and what are the highlights of people going to visit?
So first of all, I have to say I'm really in love with Stuttgart. It's a huge part of my heart. I really enjoy living there. I really do enjoy coming back there. So first of all, I would say the best thing about Stuttgart is that it's a really mixed city. So I think it's the fifth biggest city in Germany. And so you have a very huge urban area. You have a lot of bars, clubs, outgoing people, like a really urban lifestyle. But then it's also connected to nature. So you have kind of like the urban lifestyle, but you also have very nice forests. You can go on hikes, you can experience nature. So I really started liking that. It's not a gray big city. It kind of has both, and I think that is one thing that stands out the most. But also it's a really highly cultural city. So we have a really good ballet, we have good opera, we have really good theaters. So it's one of the cities where you can find the most culture in Europe. So I really appreciate that about Stuttgart. And so I could recommend for anyone who wants to travel Stuttgart to see a play, to go to opera, and just enjoy the lifestyle, the urban lifestyle, but also experience nature, and just it's also good for families too.
And it's also good for tennis players.
Oh yeah, it's actually a good area for tennis players.
Well, do you remember who won the Stuttgart tournament this year?
Yeah, there's an ATP tournament. There's an ATP tournament.
I'll test you out. Do you know who won?
See, I didn't even watch it. It's because I'm tired. Like, after the season, I get tired of tennis, so I don't watch tennis for 3 months. I just don't think of it anymore. But who won it? I know who won it. It was Berrettini, an Italian guy.
Exactly. And he had a great run at the US Open last week.
Yeah, you did. You definitely did your homework in this, right? Before this. Like, you know a lot of stuff about Stuttgart. I'm really impressed, you know.
I do know. Well, I know also there's a German tennis player called Michael Berger from Stuttgart. Do you remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he made it to, I think, around about top 40 in the world.
I know him.
Yeah, you know him?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
yeah. Sure.
So, yeah, I've done my homework on Stuttgart.
I see. On tennis, on Stuttgart. I'm amazed. Like, you're prepared. That's great.
So really, I've been to Stuttgart many times, and one of the things that you just mentioned was that it is a really cultural city, and if you want to go there and get immersed in not only German culture, I think there's a lot of diversity there as well. So it's a great place to go from that. So thank you for giving everybody a bit of a update on Stuttgart. Now, you moved your life to America. Now, tell us what was behind that.
So, I always was involved into sports, but I always liked I never had the goal of becoming pro, because it was just never my most favorite thing. And even though I'm, decently talented, I probably wouldn't make the pro tour. So, but I still didn't want to give up on tennis. Here in America, they have this really nice system where you can combine your education, like going to an American college, with your sports, and like represent your college playing on the court. And so I already liked that idea of combining academics and athletics, and that was probably the major reason. But I also wanted kind of like a change. I was a little bit tired of Germany. Obviously, I lived there 19 years. I mean, obviously I traveled, but when you're young, you're 19, you just finished high school, you also want to do something, you want to gain more experience, you know what I mean? So I was just thinking to myself, I should go on an adventure, and I should dive into a different culture.
So was the US always the country on the radar for you, or did you think about other options as well?
I've been when I was 16, my parents took me to an East and West Coast trip. So I basically went to Las Vegas, LA, New York, the Hamptons, San Francisco, and I fell in love with the country and the people and its culture. So this was probably my trigger experience when I told myself, all right, I consider this place a place where I can live in the future, or where I want to spend quite some time in my life. And so far it worked out pretty well for me. I'm really happy where I am.
Now, you talk about the culture and everything that attracted you to the US. What specifically about the culture that attracted you?
Oh, I could write a book about that.
Okay.
I could write a book about it, but let's do it.
Let's do it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So, no, but I'm saying, like, first of all...
Well, I say that because, as you said in the beginning of the show today, that there's a significant difference between Germany and the United States, right? So,
and you wouldn't think that, right? Like, you wouldn't think that. It's both, like, Western civilized countries, you know, like, same ideologies and all stuff. But in the end, it's two different worlds, man. So maybe to begin with, probably the first thing is the outgoing mentality of America, and I really like that. The Americans are really open. They're really hostile. They're really trying to make you feel welcome in their society. But it's also a society. And don't get me wrong, like, this is not German society bashing, but it is the American society is a society which doesn't envy you, and the German society is kind of like this. The American society is a society that really appreciates your work ethic, your success, and all that stuff. And I really like that about this country. But yeah, as I said, I just needed a change. And for me, it was an adventure. I didn't go into the US and expect it to be like it is, you know.
Now, you talk about the cultural difference, but one could also say there's a significant cultural difference within America. You travel from East Coast to West Coast. You would have seen what people are like in New York City versus Los Angeles, right?
And that's basically the reason why I also started the podcast, to kind of illustrate, or my podcast, to illustrate how diverse the American culture is. Because as you said, most of what the people outside of the United States know is obviously California and New York. Because that's the places which are always in the news, which are the most famous places of America. So the people from outside from the States mostly forget other states, smaller states. And basically that's also a reason why I try to keep my guests as diverse as possible. So I want to talk to a businessman, I want to talk to an artist, I want to talk to, you name it. Like, I'm trying to get a really accurate picture of how the American society looks like, because people forget about that, you know?
How do you find those guests?
It's a matter of research, to be honest. So I read a lot, mostly magazines. I'm really active in social media when it comes to finding guests. I have some great help. So I have kind of like people that help me with the research part, and it's just being aware, you know, like, it's just paying attention to news, paying attention to social trends and all that stuff. And then you see, all right, we have a certain trend right here, or there's a hot topic right here. Let's find some representatives for that and have an interview with them, and then we'll see what happens. And so I'm kind of like working around niches, you can say. So I'm trying to cover up niches, trying to cover up different stories or attitudes of a society, and then give them a voice. So yeah, that's basically how it works. It is a really subtle process, but still you gotta be really aware of what's going on.
Fantastic. Now, how old were you when you moved from Stuttgart to the US?
I was fresh 19. Almost, yeah. 19.
And what are you now?
I'm 22, yeah. So, yes, 22. Sir.
So as a 19-year-old moving from Stuttgart, and if my memory stays with me, I think Stuttgart's got about 600,000 people population.
Right, yeah, right? You're informed about that city.
And Phoenix is about 1.56
It million. Is a huge city.
So that's a big difference in terms of size of city as a 19-year-old going over there. How was that first transition? You know, can you remember the first week on the ground in Phoenix?
I could. It was insane. I remember I was traveling with my tennis rackets and all excited, you know, just finished high school and I'm going to the States. So I was really hyped. I was listening to music. I was feeling great, you know. The people talked about me, about like my sport, and I was like excited like a little kid, and then I landed in Phoenix, and the first thing I could remember is probably the most ugliest airport I've ever been to.
Yes, that's right.
So definitely no shout out to Phoenix Sky Harbor. Like I really loved airports so far, but after the Phoenix airport, like, no, you don't like airports anymore. And so,
well, you probably flew out of Munich to get there.
Yeah, I know. But jokes aside, the first thing I was overwhelmed was the heat. It was hot. I was sweating, and I was there, and it was loud. Taxis, Uber drivers everywhere, and I remember it was at night, so it was dark. I was seeing lights all over, so. I see that, and the first thing, kind of like the culture shock I had, and I actually never talked about that with anyone. So this is a premiere.
First, I've got a world exclusive. Here we go.
You got an exclusive. You're setting things free, you know, like within my memory.
Go for it.
So you know, in Germany, Uber is just not a thing. It's regulated by the government, so the Uber is not allowed to. It's only in Hamburg and in I think in Berlin you can use Uber. So I never heard of Uber. So I actually took a taxi. Like and I think that's such a foreign thing. You know, like that's who takes taxis anymore, you know? Like, you see what
Us
I'm
old
saying?
people.
Yeah, just
Us
old people, you know, like, and probably the taxi driver was like so confused, like, why is there a 19-year-old guy in my cub, you know, like, he should use an Uber, like, this is not my target market, you know. And I think, like, even though that's just a small thing, that just came to my mind. That's just a foreign thing to do. Like, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Did you have, now when you arrived that first day or first evening in Phoenix, did you have already accommodation planned and where you were going to go stay and all that?
So I remember the first night I stayed in a hotel. Because I wasn't allowed to go to the dorms yet, because my first year I lived in the dorms of my university. But since I was arriving super late at night, they wouldn't let me into the dorms, or I wasn't quite registered and all that stuff. So I booked a hotel for the first night, and then the next morning, really early, I went to breakfast and drove to the university and just went to my dorm room, and that's basically it. And then I stayed.
I hope you caught a taxi to get there. You got a taxi, right?
I got a taxi.
Yeah, of course you did. So you arrived at the university. Now, what university are we talking about here?
We're talking about Arizona Christian University, which is a really small university in the heart of Phoenix area.
So let's go back to the selection process. So you'd come over to the US with your mum and dad. You'd travelled across the country.
Yes.
What made you select Phoenix, Arizona?
So first of all, I mean, I've never been in Phoenix before, obviously, but so you know, there was an agency that helped me with being recruited by coaches in America. So I got a couple of offers. So I had the chance to go to a school in Michigan, a school in Louisiana, and school in, you name it, you know. But then I got a DM on Facebook of my former coach who asked me if I want to join Arizona Christian University, and I just, first of all, I Googled the place. I looked where it's on Google Maps, and it was actually not in the middle of nowhere, so I was really excited because I come from a big city, like, and I always stayed in in a city, so I just enjoy like living in cities in general, or in bigger cities. So for me, that was kind of like important in the process of finding a school, that it's not, like in the middle of nowhere where there's probably the grocery store is the most exciting thing to do. So
now, for those budding sports people listening to my show today who dream about getting into the American scholarship system, how does one actually go about it? How did you get accepted to be there?
So it's a tedious it's a tedious process, my man. Like, I'm telling you, it's so hard to get a visa. It's just really difficult because the Americans are super strict with their whole policy when it comes to like traveling to the States, and which is pretty annoying, but that's all right. So
You're lucky they couldn't build a wall between you and Germany.
at least they could. They tried probably, but no. So nah. But first of all, I mean, you need to have a good level to being accepted in a college in your sports. So you for sure have to ensure that you have a level to play college tennis, but then also you need to ensure that you have the right grades, but you also need to ensure that you do 2 tests that are called TOEFL and SAT to get accepted to an American university, and you need to do all right on those tests to get accepted. It's actually not that hard. It's multiple choice, but still, like it's a lot of little things. You need to translate your transcripts, apply for a visa, and to get an I-20, which is a student visa, and like get a specific visa for the purpose that you're in the States and all that stuff. So
now, when you say a certain level of, in your case, tennis, what was that level? Did you have to win tournaments, or?
Yeah, basically, like you have to somehow show to the coaches that you are playing on a good enough level to fit the university for sure. So you need to obviously do a highlight tape. You need to of your skills or whatsoever, and then you also need to show them the records of your tournaments and whoever you beat, you ever had close matches to, and kind of like a resume of your tennis life. Or
And
sports life.
Is that like an international resume? Do they expect you to have travelled in different places to play in tournaments, just from Germany?
Oh, that's another like difficult thing for the coaches, because they sometimes can't really relate if a player is good just by looking like a national German tournament, because we have different ranking systems than the US has. But at a certain level, you see it on the highlight tape. Like the coaches are experts enough to kind of figure out who's a good player. And then there's obviously international tournaments where you travel in Europe, and which kind of has like an international rating as well. So so coaches get kind of like a good overview of what your level is, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. How old were you when you started playing tennis, and why did you choose tennis as a sport?
I started really late, to be honest. Like, I started when I was 12, which is like, if I compare myself to like other tennis players who play my team or other teams, like it's kind of late. But I was playing because I was so obsessed with soccer. You know, I'm from Germany. It's a religion back home, so people love it too much. But you know, like I was the worst soccer player ever. Like I was terrible at soccer. I was a goalkeeper, and we lost like every match 20-0. Not even kidding. And like last league, and we still were able to lose every match, and I was a goalkeeper, so it was definitely not a career which would ended up being good or anything. So I don't know, I had a summer camp, and I started playing tennis for 3 weeks, and then I started liking it, picked it up a little bit, and kind of got obsessed with it and started training. And
your friends back in Germany are not going to be happy to hear you calling their favourite sport soccer. Yeah?
Yeah, soccer. Yeah, I know. Like, you can't say that. That's the thing. Here in America, like, it's obviously football, but the American listeners would probably think of American football. And I'm way too skinny to play that sport, so it's not going to happen.
Now, you said you moved over there and you didn't really want to become a professional tennis player. Why not?
It is that's a really hard question, but first of all, it is really hard to make the professional tour in tennis, because you're not, like, compared to the NBA, for example, or to the Bundesliga in Germany, to soccer. So if you're in the team, like, you have a contract and you get paid. You have a monthly contract of your salary, you have coaches, you have traveling expenses, all covered by the club, right? So if you're LeBron for the Lakers, like, LeBron doesn't pay for his hotels, LeBron doesn't pay for his coaches, he doesn't pay for his food and all that stuff. And as a tennis player, you're not you're not chosen by a team, so you have to come up with all those expenses. So actually, which that makes it a really hard job, because only the top 100 players in the world probably can make a living out of it. And to be like, if you compare that to any other job, like you don't have to be the top 100 lawyers to still make a living, you know, or you don't have to be in the top 100 podcasts to make a living out of it, you know. You see what I'm saying? But in tennis, you have to be in the top 100, and you have to sacrifice so much, and the chances are so little that you get there, which, you know, like it's really something that is almost not worth it for so many players, because the risks is so high, and that's probably a reason. And it's kind of unfair if you compare the whole system, but that's just how it is, and it's frustrating to see. But I mean, there's other ways for good players to still pursue their sports dreams. And
so you many people would say though that you are amongst the chosen ones, because you've got an opportunity to not only educate yourself but also be in a situation where you can get good training and have access to great tournaments and all that sort of stuff. So given the fact you've landed in that situation, had that not, I guess, inspired you in some way to think, okay, well, I've already taken the first step, now I've got into this situation, let's see how far I
see that. Like you have to listen, is I really improved from like a player perspective when I was here in college, but I'm really passionate about other things. Like tennis it is a really high priority, but I don't think it's really my purpose, you know. Like I think I would like to do other stuff. I don't want to limit myself on playing tennis the whole time or the whole day, you know. Like that's definitely one really huge aspect of my life, but it's not what defines me, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. So talking about those things that you do want to do that will define you, what are some of those things that you're really passionate about?
I mean, I'm a passionate podcaster. I'm a passionate student, actually. I study business administration. And I'm really passionate about politics as well. And some of my guests are politicians or political commentators. So I do like to get involved in all of that. And, you know, it's like a mix of a lot of little things, I would say. But so I really enjoy doing a lot of things at the same time, and not limit myself to just tennis or just podcasting or just, you know.
So I guess in that respect, let's talk about politics. I guess in that respect, you've come from a country where you've had a chancellor in charge for a long time now, and she's really shaped not only your country but a large part of Europe, and been very influential in that space. Now you've moved over to Trump land, and you've got all that going on. So talk us through that magnificent transition of the political sphere that you've experienced in your short time.
That's a great topic to talk about. Like seriously, that's an awesome topic, because, you know, in Germany there's this huge narrative of Trump, right? So people only have one perception of Donald Trump. And you will never hear anyone in Germany saying that Trump is a good guy. Or at least really rarely. So the perception in Germany is Donald Trump as the bad guy, which he obviously is, but, you know. So, and then you come to the States and you actually see people that advocating his policy. And first of all, you think it's a joke, you know, because you like never experienced that. And then you realize, oh, they really mean that. They really mean that. And you almost don't even have arguments against them, because you're not used to arguing against someone who supports Trump, right? And that was a huge transition for me. And also I go to a really conservative Christian school, which is also really weird, because I was raised really liberal, not in a not Christian way, you know. Like I never went to church on Sundays, and all of a sudden here I am in a small Christian conservative university in a huge city, which is really controversial too. And I took a political science elective. And I was in the class where I had to start arguing against a majority of my fellow students for abortion rights, for same-sex marriage, for for all this stuff which we take for granted, but there's still a lot of people who think that abortion should be illegal, who think that homosexual people are sinners, who think that immigrants are evil and rapists, and who still think this in these kind of ways, and that was a huge shock for me.
So how did that play out in terms of you being I guess as diplomatic as you could be, but also at the same time being open enough and transparent to share your own
because
views?
I'm someone, I really want to argue with those people. Like I kind of get I really get into those arguments, and so I also want to find out why do these people think the way they think, and all of a sudden you start talking to the people, you still cannot understand why they think that way, but you do start to see some of their points, so you actually get more open talking to those people. You get more open-minded because you might not agree with that person, but at least you get a taste of his or her perspectives, which is actually a good thing, and which is also a thing why I think a discourse or a good debate is just really essential for our democratic values.
I'm glad that we're having this conversation on my podcast show, because the reason I started this podcast show was to illustrate to the audience the impact that travel has on a human being. And we're talking now about how you've traveled by moving your life from one continent to another, and now you're living there, which is also very different than having a vacation there, right?
Exactly, Mark. I'm telling you, just the more you talk about your show, the more I actually get what you're trying to do, and I think it's a really, really good thing what you're trying to do. Just because I can really relate how much these last 2 years changed my values, changed my perspectives on things, and just so I really appreciate what you're doing. Like, I see why you're doing it. I think it's great.
Thanks, but I want to have more people like you on the show, because I think we're too. I didn't want to have a travel show where you go from Stuttgart to Hamburg for the weekend and you sit in a hotel and you tell us about your experience there. I wanted to dive deep.
You have to be part of the
You've got
culture.
to be part of the culture, and the only way that you can do that in most cases is actually go and live there and experience it, and that's what you're doing. So carry on, because I'm interested about how the ongoing transition of your life in Phoenix kind of played out in front of your own eyes. What was the outcome of that debate you were having at school? How did you handle it?
I mostly handled it in the way that I got more open-minded, because I learned about new perspectives. I also got to actually set values for me. And I said, all right, I listen to both arguments and I decide that this is what I believe. And I'm not going to let people change this belief, because I thought through it, and I considered both sides. And that's kind of how you develop your character. That's how the longer you live, you set yourself certain values for you. And that's probably what I did over the last 2 years. I really figured out what I believe in and what my my ideology is.
Your home country has a significant history with America, of course, and I'm really interested to know from that level what the reception has been. Even today, we're talking about 2019. What's the reception of it being a German in Phoenix, Arizona? Have you come across any racist issues?
Oh yeah, so I mean, not racist. Like, I would not call that, like, the particular cases, I wouldn't call that racist. I would call it like a little bit naive. So when like people talk with me about Nazi Germany or Hitler and that kind of stuff, like I don't really think they're trying to be rude or disrespectful or racist, but it's mostly like a lack of information, which I can see, which is all right. Because, I mean, they're not from Germany. Like, why would they have as much knowledge about that than I do? So you have to understand that as well. Like, that's not racism. That's mostly lack of understanding. And once you actually tell them that, Hitler's not a thing back home, they understand that, So I mean, like, jokes aside, but there were people that asked me, hey, like, is Hitler still a thing back home? Or like, and obviously you say, no, it's not, you know. Like, but it's also not a big thing, you know. Like I don't get offended by that because I wasn't part of it. Like I don't really see it as, you know, I don't get offended by that. It just wasn't around when I'm here. So you see what I'm saying. But then also, like, I got one particular case where I experienced straight up racism, and I was playing a tennis match, and you know, like tennis players talk to themselves.
Yeah,
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Because it's such a lonely sport if you look at it. So you start talking to yourself, and which is a weird thing. So don't think I'm crazy. But,
Hey, I'm sitting in the country that has Nick Kyrgios as a tennis star.
Fair,
so
fair.
There's
That's
probably
true.
no
So
one
you
else
know,
that
you
talks
know.
on a tennis court like Nick does, right? So
That's true. So obviously I talk in German. So I'm or like sometimes when I hit a bad ball, I cuss in German, or like I get obsessed in German with myself, and it's really intense, the game, as you know. So
have you ever had an
so
umpire pull you up who understood what you were saying?
yeah, for
okay.
sure. I got a lot
yeah.
of warnings. I got a lot of warnings for that. But so there was that one case where I was just like, we had a really close match, and the guy was leading 4-1, but I was able to pull to turn the set around and win it 7-5. And the guy was so angry about myself, so he said, "Why don't you just go back to where you're from?" And that was probably the one thing I would consider racism. And I didn't let him get to my head. I played the match. I won the match. I went to the net and I told him, "Hey man,
I'm not going home."
what's wrong with you? Like, what's up with you? What's going on in your head?" And you wanna know probably the funniest thing. 2 weeks after that match, my coach gets a handwritten note by the same player who's apologizing
Well,
to
good
me.
on him for doing it. Good on him for apologizing.
Yeah, but it's like, come on, like I can see the coach like punishing him, and like he has to go to his office and write that letter, and you know, like, but that was hilarious, and he was like, "Hey Theo, I just wanted to apologize for my comments."
I want to go back to what you just talked about in terms of the somewhat naivety towards, you know, you as a German in America, and relating that again back to travel. And as we know, a lot of Americans don't travel outside of the United States, so they don't have that worldly experience that a lot of Europeans have, for instance. And let's face it, you come from a country where you've got neighbors and cultural differences just hundreds of kilometers from your front door, and as a result of that, you kind of, you know, if you go skiing in the winter in Europe, you're next to Italians and French and Swiss, and you're all mingling as one, right? But in the United States, it's still, you know, one could argue there's a lot of diversity in that respect. But what I'm trying to say is that you've probably been brought up in a world where that multiple integration is so different than in America. Right?
Like, see, it's just so easy to travel in Europe, as you know. Like, you hop on a train, you take a bus, you know, like, the infrastructure is so much nicer. Like, it's so more convenient to travel. So you actually get to travel a lot. So it's also cheap. Like, I remember I was going with my friends to Italy for 3 weeks and just hanging out around there, looking at the nice things in Rome, Florence, Milan, you know. I went to France, I went to London, you know, like, it's just easy to travel within Europe. And obviously that makes you more aware of things. Like, that's also a message you're trying to promote, is just basically that travel makes you, it sounds super cheesy, but it does make you just more aware of things and makes you more open-minded.
I don't know about you, but I get quite annoyed when I'm sitting at a restaurant somewhere around the world and I listen to somebody who's obviously a tourist sitting there saying, "Oh, we don't have this like this at home," you know. Well, it really annoys me because, one, you're traveling because you're not at home and you're actually there to enjoy.
It's also like, that's a little of an American thing. Like, again, I don't want to be an America basher or anything, but like, you see Americans go to a freaking Starbucks in a foreign country, and you're thinking in your head, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Go to a local German coffee shop and don't go to Starbucks, because you've been drinking Starbucks since you're 3 years old.
Sometimes you can't. But as you say, we're not American bashing here. We're just putting out some cultural differences. Now, I'm interested to know when we're talking about. I'm interested to know when we're talking
making
about that. Fun. Besides your obvious things like family and friends, what are you missing most about Germany by living in America?
The bread.
That was a pretty immediate response.
You see how much I value the German bread, I guess. No, I'm saying just what I truly miss is probably the way how you move. It's here in America, like you walk 20 minutes and you're at the next gas station, and in Germany or Europe you walk 20 minutes and you can actually go places. You can use a bus, you can bike, you can, the mobility is just so much more convenient in Europe. And I mean, I have a really old shitty Lexus here in America. I bought a super old car, and it gets me places, not gonna lie, but it's just, it's, everything is so big, the dimensions are insane. So sometimes that's a little bit annoying. Like in Phoenix, you drive 40 minutes on a highway, you're still in Phoenix. When you drive 40 minutes in Germany, you're probably in the Netherlands. So that's the thing, So yeah.
So since you've been based in Phoenix, have you had the opportunity to get out and explore not only Arizona but nearby states as well? Where have you been
so
to?
I have the opportunity to again play college here. So when we travel and play others, so what we do is we travel and play other schools in America. So our conference, so kind of like our league, is in the greater California, Arizona area. So I get the chance to go to Cali a lot. And
so is it like the NCAA in basketball? Is it equivalent to that kind of
thing?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So yeah, it's just for tennis, and so I get to travel kind of like within the Cali, Phoenix, Arizona area, and that's really nice because everybody loves California. I love California, and it's like I get to go there really often. And then, I mean, I go to Florida every once in a while. We just went to Mobile in Alabama to play nationals. So it opens a lot of doors.
So where does your university rank? Stanford's number one, obviously. Yeah, UCS is number two. Is that right?
I mean, we're an NIA school, which is kind of like the same thing than an NCAA, but it's just private colleges.
Yeah.
So
right.
And we finished 12th in the nation last year.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yep.
That's pretty good. So what's the level like compared to Germany, for instance? If is it way better or
not necessarily way better? It's really up to the teams. And to be honest, like you would say, I don't actually play Americans. I just play people. I just play other foreigners. Because in tennis, there's not a lot of like Americans that play tennis. It's mostly people from foreign countries, South America, France, Germany, UK, that come and play college tennis in the States. That's actually surprising, but it's up to the team.
That's a really interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's just because tennis is not a big thing in the United States,
not
right?
really. It's more important than not in European countries or South American countries. It still is really appreciated in America, and obviously you have the US Open as you want the huge Grand Slam and a lot of just courts and clubs everywhere. But you can't compare it to like baseball, American football, basketball,
But I guess also a lot of the sports over there are run by celebrities who really make a name within their sport, and you haven't really had anyone in the tennis world since the Agassiz and the McEnroes and those guys that have come through, right? So they haven't really had anybody, have they? That could hang their hat on
the women,
and say, well,
the Serena sisters, the
Serena,
Williams sisters.
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but besides that, American tennis is kind of like on a low right now, but they have some pretty good juniors. So
you were talking about your obvious passion for California. Is that somewhere that you potentially see yourself living in the future?
I wish. But the thing is, It's actually hilarious. So, because the people say sometimes they say about what they say about the state of Arizona is it's kind of like a light version of California. So, because you don't have the beach, but you still have the same weather, you still have palm trees everywhere, you still have just beautiful landscapes, nice cities. But it's not as expensive as California is, and I love California. I've been to San Diego multiple times, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all that stuff. So I really get to see quite a lot of California, and I really like it. But you just can't compare like the standard of living from Arizona to Cali, because gas prices are the double amount in Cali, rent prices is the double amount, and and that's the thing. Like here in Arizona, you get a really, really good quality of life for way less money than you do in California. So it's always a sacrifice. Just when you think about like maybe you consider living there, or
So it's definitely a financial thing. What are you hoping to come out of university with as far as qualifications?
I mean, I have to say, like, if I ever be blessed enough to have that kind of money, I obviously consider living in California for sure. But I mean, right now I'm pursuing a business degree, which gives me a lot of possibilities because it's a really broad, just a really broad field. Like with a business degree, you can basically do whatever you want. You can open a restaurant, you can do your own podcast, you can, you name it. You can do anything you want, basically. And that's kind of the way I chose it, because I don't really have a plan right now. For me it's really just finding some experience, gaining some experience, but also maybe I'm looking forward to do an internship maybe next summer, maybe within the media or film industry. That sounds so cliche right now, right? Like, oh my god, like I'm looking for an internship, I don't know where to go, I'm the typical 22-year-old. The people probably hate me right now. Like, they think like, oh my god.
I'm sure they don't. Now I'm interested to get back onto some travel conversation in terms of the differences in landscapes between Europe and the US. So I've always said I've traveled quite extensively throughout the US, and I've always said to people that the US has some of the most amazing scenery in the world, which I still believe it has. But have you kind of been wowed a few times by the places you've actually visited and thought, wow, I didn't think it was this good over here?
Oh, I mean, that's basically what happened when I first got to Cali. I was overwhelmed with the nature and the beach and all that stuff, but I also was overwhelmed with Phoenix, especially Sedona. That's kind of like 2 hours away from Phoenix. It's a really beautiful place, beautiful destination. So maybe another tip for people who travel to Phoenix, you should definitely stop by Sedona. It's way better than the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon is a little overrated, but Sedona is the place to be when you're ever in Arizona.
Now Sedona's near Flagstaff, isn't it?
I honestly don't know. I'm sorry.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. No, I'm pretty sure it is, and it's famous for its red rocks and stuff.
It's amazing. Like you can you can jump in the water from 13 meters. You can swim. You can hike. You can do everything. It's beautiful. I love it.
So have you become acclimatized to the extraordinary heat that happens in the desert out there? It's a dry heat, though.
It is dry. It's dry. So the people always say it's not that hot because it's a dry heat, but I can guarantee you it's still hot. Just because it's a dry heat, it doesn't make the heat less, So so a lot of people say that here in Arizona. It's kind of like a thing. But obviously, like doing sports in this heat and like playing on the court and hitting the gym is just really, really exhausting, and you really have to get used to it. But you also have to watch your steps. Like you have to watch your nutrition, you have to watch your hydration, your hours of sleep, in order to kind of like survive in the desert, you could say that. So you have to start making more things the right way, because you just have to figure out ways for your body to adapt to your surroundings.
Are you playing a lot of indoor tennis?
No, not at all. It's
No?
just everything outdoor. No need for indoor here because it doesn't rain. Maybe once a year.
No, I was thinking kind of from more cooler perspective and having an
that
indoor
doesn't
air-conditioned?
happen. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
Like, you really gotta go through hell.
So are you on clay or hardcore?
No, everything's hardcore, which makes it kind of like almost harder because it's just more intense with the sliding and stopping and change of direction. So it is, but you get used to it. I mean, you adapt to the surroundings pretty well.
What's the schedule like in terms of how many hours a day do you play and train?
So usually a typical day looks like I get up at 5 a.m. I get dressed for the gym. I get to the gym at 6 a.m. and we work out as a team for a good hour. Then we do have mental training, mental coaching for another 30 minutes in which we kind of talk about or learn about the mental aspect of the game. Then we have classes, usually from 9 to 2:45ish, 2:43 something. Obviously we have like a lunch break, and then we have tennis practice at 4 to 6, and after 6 we hit the physio, the trainers, to get rehab and to get recovery, which is another probably like 30 minutes. So I'm probably back at 7 p.m. every day, start my day at 5 a.m., get back at 7 p.m. and I haven't done homework yet. So, and I haven't edited another episode from my podcast
Your
yet.
podcast, yeah.
And I haven't,
hours, yeah.
and I haven't cooked dinner yet. So I probably end up doing that the rest of the night.
So it's a pretty intense day.
It is. It's Monday through Friday. It's a lot of work. You don't have a lot of breaks. You need to prepare yourself really well. So, for example, when you obviously watch your nutrition as an athlete. So you need to sure you eat at the right time. You eat the right foods. So you need to prepare that the night before or even a couple of days before. So you start meal prepping, you start doing all that kind of stuff. You start packing your like backpacks with shower stuff, with training stuff, with school stuff, and you kind of really need to learn how to be organized to survive.
How much difference do you think this whole experience is having on you compared to if you would have stayed living in Germany for the rest of your days?
It's for sure something that, like, I kind of talk with my family about that. I just mentioned it made me more disciplined. I was always someone who was really outgoing, but I forgot a lot of my stuff. I lost my wallets all the time, like I was really all over the place, kind of. So I really had to.
Well, Mum used to be able to find it for you all the time.
Yeah, Mum was always angry at me for losing whatever, So I really and you can't have that lifestyle here. You can't be that kind of guy here. And so I really had to adapt and learn how to be more organized. I still struggle with it today. It's not easy, but also that's one thing I learned. And then also it's a really success-driven society here in the States. And it's really hard to explain, but everyone you get to know kind of has like a little side hustle and is passionate about having their own projects and doing whatever and being an entrepreneur. So you kind of you start liking that idea. You start liking the fact that everyone is really driven, So I kind of developed a drive within myself, I would say, just from being here, which I highly appreciate.
And what about as far as your family goes? Do they come over and visit, or do you go back to Germany?
So I actually have the chance. I have 2 breaks a year. One is 3 to 4 weeks over Christmas, and then as I mentioned earlier, the larger summer break which is 3 months. And so far I always went back home just to see my family and my friends and just go back and have a little rest and work on some other stuff, and then but as I said, next summer I might challenge myself again and stay in the States and do that, and you see, like, we'll see. It's always good to go back. I can say that it's always good because you do miss your family, you do miss the friends, you do miss a little bit of free time, And so I'm always excited to go back. But as I can tell, after the 3 months, I'm motivated again to go back into the States and start the whole thing again, so.
Well, for someone who's interested in politics next year in the United States, it's going to be a year you can't miss. Yeah?
I'm looking forward for that.
Circus,
I watched the whole debate.
The circus starts again.
I watched the whole Democratic debate. 3 hours. 3 hours. I was there. I made myself popcorn. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Yep. Amazing. I'm looking so forward for that. That's going to be a good fight.
It's going to be interesting.
Good year. Yeah, really interesting. Lots of good candidates.
So before I let you go today, I kind of want to close with a bit of a philosophical response from you in the way that
love that
this whole travel experience and what it means as far as how you see the world today. You're a young guy. You've left home. You're now in the United States, and as you've just explained, it's a place that's running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and everyone's trying to be successful. Right. So what's that impacted on you as far as your view on the world today?
That's a really tough question, but a really good question. It has impacted me in so many ways. So first of all, I have to say I set a lot of my morals that I keep within myself. I set them. I made them clear for myself, and I also just adopted a different way of being. To be honest, like. I started to become more confident. I started to be more mature, for sure. I started to be more professional in things, and I kind of grew up a little bit, So I'm not that teenager who doesn't have.
Do you think this experience has made you grow up faster than?
Yeah, you can say that because you have to commit to a lot of things, and like commitment is a really rare thing in our society, especially when you're young. People don't like to commit to things anymore. They rather have a lot of freedom, and here, the place where I am, I have to be really committed about things. So that probably made me grow a little bit, and I just learned about people. Probably I learned how to cope with people, and just a lot of things. Like it's been an incredible experience for me. Like I'm really grateful for where I'm at.
Really enjoyed having you on the show, and I'd like to have you back at some stage in the future after you've done a little bit more traveling around the United States, and you can report back to my audience about some of the next places that you get to go to, and it can be with your tennis, or it can be just as a trip on a side. Even if you do a road trip somewhere, come back and tell me all about it if you'd like to do that. Now, before you go though, why don't you give your own podcast show a bit of a plug so people can find it, and I'll actually put it in the description as well of my podcast here so people can find it.
Yeah, my podcast is called Stars, Stripes, Stories. And as I said, it's about culture mediation. I talk to a variety of guests which form the American society, but also gets a better insight of why this culture is so diverse yet so great. And I would love for you to guys check it out on my social media, Facebook, Instagram. You find me there, Star Stripe Stories, but also Anchor, Apple Music, Google Podcast, all the platforms. You guys know it. I don't need to say that. You can find me there. I would love for you to check it out, tune in sometimes. I really like it.
Wonderful. Theo, thanks so much for coming on my show.
It was a pleasure,
today,
man.
And I'm going to get to work now on editing this, as you know what you go through when you have to edit a show.
It's always tough.
I'll get it out there as quickly as I can for everybody.
That'd be awesome. It was really nice meeting you and talking to you. I really enjoy your project. Keep it up.
Terrific. Thanks, Theo. And we'll be in touch, and enjoy the beautiful evening in Phoenix tonight.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Okay, we'll see you. There we are. That was Theo Preiswerk, and he was talking to us about the huge life transition of traveling from Germany to live and study in the United States of America. And I hope a lot of you found that very useful and engaging, as I did, to listen to someone's perspective on living in a vastly different culture at such a young age. Great chat there, Theo. Thank you very much for coming on the show. So that's it, the end of this episode. If you're looking for other episodes from the Global Travel Channel podcast show, you can find them all on our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com. Or you can download them from Apple iTunes, from Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a host of other platforms that you'll find listed on our website. Don't forget, we have a Patreon page, so if you want to support the ongoing sustainability of this podcast show, you can make a small contribution that will be greatly received. So that's it for this episode. I look forward to coming back and doing another one shortly. My name is Mark Philpott. Until next time, I wish you all bon voyage.